July 8th, 2014. Varna Airport, Bulgaria. The time stamp on the closed-circuit television footage reads 9:53 in the morning. The video quality is grainy, typical of security cameras from the mid-2010s. Yet the details are undeniably sharp in their implication. We see the sliding glass doors of the terminal entrance. The sunlight outside is harsh, bleaching the pavement white, contrasting sharply with the cool, artificial shadows of the airport interior. A man enters the frame. He is 28 years old. He wears a yellow t-shirt, jean shorts, and sneakers. His name is Lars Mittank. What happens in the next 28 seconds has become one of the most dissected, analyzed, and haunting sequences in the history of the modern internet. It is a piece of digital folklore that refuses to fade. A loop of video that plays over and over in the minds of thousands of armchair detectives. Lars is not walking. He is sprinting. This is not the jog of a man late for a flight. This is not the athletic stride of someone exercising. The body language is primal. His shoulders are hunched, his head is down, and his arms pump with a frantic, desperate rhythm. He is running for his life. He bursts out of the terminal doors, ignoring the flow of pedestrian traffic. He does not look back. He does not hesitate. He traverses the parking lot, weaving past buses and surprised travelers, his yellow shirt a blur against the gray concrete. He reaches the perimeter of the airport grounds. There is a fence there. It is 2.5 meters high, topped with barbed wire. For a man carrying an injury, a ruptured eardrum, suspected to be causing him significant pain and balance issues, his physical performance is anomalous. He does not slow down to assess the obstacle. He scales the fence with a frantic, adrenaline-fueled efficiency, vaulting over the sharp wire and dropping into the dense sunflower field on the other side. He disappears into the foliage, and then silence. Lars Mittank is never seen again. To understand the gravity of this moment, we must freeze the frame. We must step back from the pixelated image of the man in the yellow shirt and look at the surrounding data. We need to reconstruct the sensory reality of that morning to understand why a German tourist, moments away from a flight home to safety, would abandon his luggage, his passport, and his mobile phone to flee into an unknown wilderness. This is not just a missing person case. This is a descent into high strangeness, where the logic of human behavior fractures and breaks down completely. Let us rewind the digital tape. Lars Mittank arrived in Bulgaria on June 30th, 2014. He was traveling with a group of friends from his hometown of Itzehoe, northern Germany. Their destination was Golden Sands, a seaside resort town often referred to as the jagged, louder cousin of Ibiza. It is a place of neon lights, cheap alcohol, and the thumping bass of electronic dance music that vibrates through the floorboards of hotels until dawn. For the first few days, the digital footprint of the group suggests a standard vacation. Photographs show smiling faces, poolside drinks, and the camaraderie of young men abroad. Lars, described by those who knew him as calm and grounded, seemed to be enjoying himself. He was a fan of the football club Werder Bremen. He had a stable job at a power plant. He was not known for erratic behavior or drug abuse. However, the atmosphere shifted on July 6th. The catalyst was a physical altercation. The details remain somewhat murky, filtered through the haze of memory and perhaps alcohol. But the consensus is that Lars and his friends encountered a group of Bayern Munich fans. Words were exchanged. Later that night, Lars became separated from his group. He appeared at a McDonald's restaurant alone. When he returned to his friends later, he claimed to have been beaten up by 4 men, possibly hired by the rival fans, or perhaps locals. The injury was specific and painful, a ruptured eardrum. This injury is the pivot point where the timeline begins to warp. While his friends prepared to fly back to Germany on July 7th, Lars was grounded. A local doctor advised him that the change in cabin pressure during a flight could be catastrophic for his ear. He was prescribed an antibiotic called cefuroxime 500, along with painkillers, and told to remain in Bulgaria until the injury healed or until he could find alternative transport. His friends offered to stay. Lars insisted they leave. He claimed he would be fine. He checked out of their shared hotel and moved into a cheaper, nondescript hotel near the airport in Varna, known as the Hotel Color. It is here, in the solitary confinement of a budget hotel room in a foreign city, that the psychological texture of the event changes from unfortunate to sinister. The night of July 7th into the morning of July 8th is a study in escalating paranoia. Lars began to make phone calls and send text messages to his mother back in Germany. The tone of these transmissions was not that of a man annoyed by a delayed trip. They were the messages of a man under siege. He whispered that people were watching him. He claimed the hotel reception staff were acting strangely. He told his mother to cancel his credit cards. In one particularly chilling text, he asked about his medication. "What is cefuroxime 500? He seemed convinced the pills were not medicine, but something else, something designed to harm him. At one point in the night, the paranoia drove him out of the hotel room. He did not sleep. Witnesses and later, security cameras place him pacing the hallways, looking over his shoulder, peering into shadows. He eventually left the hotel entirely, wandering the dark streets of Varna in the early hours. He reported to his mother that he was hiding from 4 men who were following him. He asked her to wire him 500 euros via Western Union, but he never collected the money. The sun rose on July 8th. The night terrors should have receded with the daylight. Lars hailed a taxi and headed for Varna Airport. He texted his mother one last time to say he was on his way to the terminal. The assumption was that he would see the airport doctor again, get cleared to fly despite the risk, or perhaps just sit in the safety of the departure lounge. CCTV footage shows him arriving at the airport. He looks weary. He is carrying his travel bag, a large hold all, and a backpack. He walks with purpose, though his head swivels frequently, scanning the perimeter. He enters the medical center at the airport for a consultation with Dr. Kostov. We have the testimony of Dr. Kostov, which adds a layer of clinical sterility to the impending chaos. The doctor described Lars as nervous and erratic. Lars entered the examination room, luggage in hand, refusing to leave his bags in the waiting area. According to the doctor, the consultation was tense but proceeding. Lars was questioned about the medication he had taken, but then the environment suffered an intrusion. A construction worker, dressed in standard work attire, entered the medical office. It was likely a mundane error, a worker looking for a supervisor or doing renovations on the terminal. But to Lars Mittank, in his heightened state of reality, this was the signal. The doctor reports that upon seeing the worker, Lars began to tremble. He stood up abruptly. His words, translated from the report, were chilling in their absolute finality. "I do not want to die here. I have to get out of here." This brings us back to the footage. Lars leaves the doctor's office, but he does not just leave. He abandons his anchor to the world. He drops his heavy bag on the floor. He leaves his wallet, containing his identification and money, inside the bag. He leaves his mobile phone. He strips himself of every tool a modern human needs to navigate society. He exits the medical center and begins to run. The footage captures him traversing the main terminal hall. It is a large, open space with polished floors reflecting the fluorescent lights. Passengers are wheeling suitcases, checking departure boards, drinking coffee. In the middle of this mundane choreography, Lars is a vector of pure panic. He runs past the check-in counters. He runs past the coffee shops. The camera angles switch as he moves through the zones of the airport. Camera 1, Camera 3, Camera 4. He is consistent in his pace. He is not looking for a police officer. He is not looking for help. He is fleeing a threat that only he can perceive. He exits the building. The automatic doors slide open, unable to keep up with his speed. He hits the hot air of the Bulgarian summer. Outside, the CCTV captures the final leg of his journey within civilization. He runs across the bus lanes. He enters the parking area. He approaches the perimeter fence. We see him slow down only for a fraction of a second to gauge the height. He jumps, pulls himself up, and swings his legs over the barbed wire. The woods beyond the fence are thick. They are a mix of acacia trees and dense undergrowth, bordering a field of sunflowers. Sunflowers in July are tall, easily concealing a man who wishes to remain hidden. The camera holds the shot of the fence. 1 second, he is there, a silhouette against the greenery. The next second, he is gone. The footage continues to roll. The cars drive by. The wind blows through the trees. The airport operations continue. But Lars Mittank has crossed a threshold. He has moved from the documented world of travel logs, security cameras, and cellular networks into the liminal space of the missing. This incident, which lasted less than a minute from the moment he left the doctor's office to the moment he crested the fence, presents a profound anomaly. Consider the biological imperative. Survival instincts usually dictate that we seek safety in numbers. If a man is being chased, he runs toward a police officer, a security guard, or a crowd. He screams for help. Lars did the opposite. He ran away from the security of a federal building, away from the crowds, and toward isolation. He ran into a trap of his own making. Furthermore, consider the items left behind. The passport, the phone. To abandon these is to abandon one's identity. It suggests a state of mind where the future, the concept of needing a passport to get home tomorrow, has ceased to exist. There is only the terrified now. Was it a reaction to the cefuroxime 500, a rare side effect inducing acute psychosis? Was it the concussion from the fight days earlier, swelling and pressing against the centers of the brain that control fear and logic? Or was the threat real? Was he truly being hunted by a criminal element invisible to the cameras? A threat so severe that the barbed wire fence and the unknown woods seemed like the safer option. The screen goes black. The recording ends. What remains is the silence of the sunflower field, a silence that has held its secrets for over a decade. The yellow shirt, bright and cheerful, vanishing into the green. This was the incident, but the story does not end at the fence. The search that followed and the theories that rose from the digital ether would only deepen the mystery of the man who ran for his life from nothing. To understand the disappearance of Lars Mittank, we must dismantle the singular, viral image of a man sprinting away from an airport terminal. That 29-second clip is merely the kinetic termination of a much slower, more corrosive process. It is the final sentence of a paragraph written over the course of several days in a specific geographic and cultural crucible. To understand why he ran, we must look at where he was standing, not just physically, but psychologically and pharmacologically. We must begin with the location: Varna, Bulgaria. To the uninitiated, Varna is simply a resort destination on the Black Sea coast. But to the digital archaeologist, the topography reveals a stark dissonance. Varna is a city of ancient history, holding the oldest gold treasure in the world. Yet the area known as the Golden Sands, or Sea Latini Piasatsi, is a modern, artificial construct. It is a tourist enclave designed for consumption. In the summer of 2014, the Golden Sands functioned as a specific type of pressure valve for Western European youth. It was, and remains, a budget-friendly alternative to Ibiza or Majorca. It attracts a demographic looking for excess, cheap alcohol, loud music, and the suspension of social norms. It is a place of neon lights and deep shadows, where the infrastructure of post-Soviet transition meets the hedonism of the West. For a group of young German men from Wilhelmshaven, this was the standard itinerary. But the cultural friction in such places is often underestimated. You have the local population working long hours in a service economy that caters to wealthy foreigners, and you have the tourists, often intoxicated and unaware of local codes of conduct. This brings us to the catalyst, the concept of tribalism. Lars was not just a tourist. He was a fan of Werder Bremen. In the ecosystem of German football, allegiances are not merely hobbies, they are identities. While Lars was described by friends as peaceful and not the hooligan type, he was existing in a space where symbols matter. The altercation at the McDonald's is the first fracture in the narrative. Reports suggest a verbal disagreement with fans of Bayern Munich. In the sober light of day, a dispute over football teams seems trivial. However, in the context of the Golden Sands nightlife, fueled by alcohol and the testosterone-heavy atmosphere of the resort, it is a flashpoint. It is important to note the specific vulnerability of the solo traveler within a group dynamic. When Lars separated from his friends, even briefly, the protective membrane of the social unit dissolved. He became a target. The resulting injury, a ruptured tympanic membrane, was not just a physical trauma. It was a geographical anchor. The human ear is a delicate instrument of balance and pressure. A rupture is painful, disorienting, and susceptible to infection. But its most critical implication in this case was the prohibition on air travel. The cabin pressure of a commercial airliner at cruising altitude could cause permanent damage or excruciating pain to a ruptured eardrum. This medical fact is what severed Lars from his pack. His friends flew home. Lars stayed behind. This moment of separation is the true beginning of the mystery. We move from a group holiday to a survival horror scenario. We must now examine the pharmacological element. Lars visited a local doctor who prescribed cefprozil, marketed under the name Cefsil. This is a cephalosporin antibiotic, generally considered safe. However, in the deep dive of medical literature, we find the outliers, the obscure footnotes. Cefprozil sits in a class of drugs that can, in rare instances, cross the blood-brain barrier. The listed side effects include dizziness and hyperactivity. But looking broader at beta-lactam antibiotics, there are documented cases of antibiotic-induced neurotoxicity. Symptoms can include confusion, somnolence, and in very rare cases, acute psychosis and paranoia. 500 milligrams. That was the dosage. We must consider the synthesis. A young man, alone in a foreign country where he does not speak the language. He has just suffered a head injury. The blow to the ear implies significant force. He is in pain. He is sleep deprived. And now he introduces a potent chemical agent into his system. Whether the paranoia was organic, chemically induced, or a rational reaction to a real threat, the result was the same: a total collapse of trust in his environment. The technology of 2014 plays a pivotal role here. We were in the era of the smartphone, but not the era of seamless connectivity. Roaming charges were exorbitant. Wi-Fi was patchy and insecure. Communication was a lifeline, but it was thin. The text messages Lars sent to his mother are the artifacts of a mind under siege. He asked her to cancel his bank cards. He claimed people were trying to kill him. He was asking about the medication. This brings us to the night of July 7th. Lars checked into the hotel color. This location is significant. It was not in the tourist center. It was in a rougher, more industrial part of Varna. The photos of the hotel from that era show a place that is functional, stark, and utterly devoid of comfort. To a mind already spiraling, the cracked pavement and the dimly lit corridors would not look like a budget hotel. They would look like a trap. He left the hotel in the middle of the night. CCTV captures him pacing the lobby, hiding in elevators. This is the behavior of prey. He is trying to minimize his heat signature. He is trying to become invisible. We must look at the specific cultural moment of the internet sleuth. When this case broke, it landed on forums like Reddit and 4chan at a time when the collective intelligence of the internet was just realizing its power. Users dissected the hotel footage frame by frame. They analyzed the shadows. They debated the existence of the 4 men Lars claimed were following him. Was there a threat? In the Golden Sands, organized crime is not a fiction. the intersection of nightlife, security rackets, and the drug trade creates a gray zone. If Lars had inadvertently insulted the wrong person during the fight, or if he had witnessed something he shouldn't have while wandering the back streets, the threat could have been real. Paranoia is a mechanism that interprets coincidence as conspiracy. If a car drives by twice, it is surveillance. If a stranger looks at you, they are an agent. In Varna, a city of strangers, everything confirmed his fear. By the time Lars arrived at Varna Airport on July 8th, he had likely not slept in 48 hours. The airport is a liminal space. Anthropologist Mark Odge describes these as non-places, zones of transit where identity is suspended. For a traveler, an airport is a gateway. For someone experiencing a psychotic break, it is a panopticon. Cameras are everywhere. Uniformed security personnel are everywhere. Lars sought sanctuary in the office of the airport doctor. Doctor. Cost to cost of. The testimony of Dr. Kostov provides the most clinical insight we have into Lars's final known moments. He described Lars as nervous and erratic, but the critical moment, the ignition point, was the interruption. A construction worker entered the office. To you or me, this is a mundane event. Airport renovations are constant, but view this through the lens of Lars Mittank in that specific moment. He believes he is being hunted. He believes the medication is poison. He has sought refuge in the one room that implies safety, a medical office. And then the door opens. A stranger enters. The uniform of the worker, the tools, the intrusion. In the logic of the paranoid mind, this was the breach. The sanctuary was compromised. The hunters had found him. This explains the explosion of kinetic energy. The flight or flight response was fully activated. He did not take his luggage. He did not take his phone. These were anchors. To survive, he had to jettison everything that connected him to the system that was hunting him. He ran out of the office. He ran through the terminal. The CCTV footage captures this run. But look closely at the mechanics of his movement. He is not running towards a gate. He is not running towards a taxi. He is running towards the perimeter. He scales a fence, 2.5 meters high, topped with barbed wire. This is not the act of a hooligan or a drunk tourist. This is the act of a human being driven by primal, overwhelming terror. He breached the boundary of the airport, crossing from the controlled, sterile zone of the terminal into the wild, overgrown fields of sunflowers and dense woodland that border the runway. The geography of the perimeter is crucial. Beyond that fence lies a dense thicket, leading onto the A2 highway and vast agricultural land. It is a landscape that swallows people. The tragedy of Lars Mittank is a perfect storm of disparate elements converging on a single timeline. The tribalism of football culture that caused the injury, the physiology of the inner ear that trapped him in the country, the pharmacology of a common antibiotic that may have destabilized his mind, the isolation of the solo traveler, and the liminal, high-security environment of an airport that acted as the final pressure cooker. He entered the forest, and the forest kept him. In the years since, there have been sightings. Truck drivers in Brazil, homeless men in Berlin. But these are likely phantoms, manifestations of our collective desire for a resolution. The context reveals that Lars did not vanish into thin air. He vanished into a crack in our modern infrastructure, a gap between the medical system, the travel industry, and the indifference of a tourist town. We are left with the silence of the sunflowers. This concludes the analysis of the context. In the next file, we will examine the aftermath and the theories that attempt to fill the void he left behind. Part 3. The investigation. The frame freezes. In the collective memory of the internet, Lars Mittank is forever suspended in that pixelated stride, 1 foot raised, heading toward a fence that marked the boundary between civilization and the unknown. But when the recording stops, the silence begins. And in that silence, we find the chaotic, sprawling, and often contradictory architecture of the investigation. To understand why a 28-year-old man can vanish from a highly monitored international transport hub in broad daylight, we must first look at the immediate aftermath. The response from local authorities in Varna was, by most accounts, sluggish. The initial assumption was not one of abduction or foul play, but of a voluntary disappearance. In the eyes of law enforcement, an adult male running away from an airport is not a crime. It is a behavioral anomaly. When the airport security secured Lars's luggage, they found a tableau of a life interrupted. His wallet, his cell phone, his passport, the currency required to leave the country. These items are the anchors of modern identity. To abandon them is to become a ghost before one has even died. The presence of these items ruled out a standard robbery. If this was a mugging gone wrong, the perpetrators left behind the very things they would have targeted. This brings us to the first and most prominent vector of analysis, the medical theory. The Occam's razor of this case points to a pharmacological reaction. We know Lars was prescribed cefprozil, 500 milligrams. This is a cephalosporin antibiotic. While generally considered safe, the medical literature attached to this drug lists rare but severe side effects. Among them are agitation, confusion, and in very specific cases, acute psychosis or paranoia. We must overlay this chemical factor with the physical trauma. Lars had suffered a ruptured eardrum. The vestibular system, which controls balance and spatial orientation, is intimately connected to our psychological state. Disruption there, combined with sleep deprivation and a potent antibiotic, could theoretically create a perfect storm of cognitive dissonance. However, proponents of the medical theory often hit a wall when analyzing the CCTV footage. A man in the throes of a debilitating psychotic break usually lacks coordination. Yet Lars cleared a 2-meter fence with distinct athleticism. His run was purposeful. He did not stumble. He was navigating his environment with high efficiency, which suggests his fight or flight response was fully activated, but his motor control remained intact. This leads us to the second prevailing theory, often discussed in the darker corners of investigative forums: the criminal element. The timeline suggests Lars felt he was being hunted. His text messages to his mother were explicit. He asked about the medication, yes, but he also claimed that 4 men were following him. He asked her to cancel his cards. This is specific, actionable paranoia. We must look at the altercation in Golden Sands days prior. The details of the fight that ruptured his eardrum remain hazy. Some reports suggest he was separated from his friends at a McDonald's and clashed with a group regarding football rivalries, Werder Bremen versus Bayern Munich. Others suggest he hired locals for protection later that week. If Lars was entangled with local organized crime, the airport would not necessarily be a sanctuary. Varna is a port city, a transit point. Theories have circulated that Lars may have been coerced into being a drug mule, causing his panic when faced with airport security. But again, the luggage tells a different story. If he was carrying illicit substances, they would likely be in the bag he abandoned. Police searches of the luggage yielded no drugs. There is also the matter of the airport doctor. His testimony is the last verified human interaction Lars ever had. The doctor described Lars as trembling, erratic, and terrified. But internet sleuths have long scrutinized the doctor's behavior as well. Why did the construction worker entering the room trigger such an absolute panic in Lars? The doctor claimed the worker was simply there for renovations. But to Lars, in his heightened state, this figure represented an immediate threat. The investigation on the ground was physically difficult. The terrain surrounding Varna Airport is deceptive. It appears to be flat agricultural land, but it is a dense matrix of sunflower fields. We need to discuss the topography of a sunflower field. In July, these plants are approximately 2 meters tall. They are dense, fibrous, and visually impenetrable. A human body lying between the rows is invisible from 5 meters away. let alone from the road. The police used cadaver dogs and drones in the weeks following the disappearance. They combed the immediate vicinity of the highway, where the CCTV footage suggests Lars was heading. They found nothing. No shredded clothing. No tracks. No remains. This absence of physical evidence created a vacuum that was quickly filled by the internet. This is where the digital archaeology aspect becomes paramount. The disappearance of Lars Mittank coincided with the rise of the true crime web sleuth community. A Facebook page titled "Find It, Lars Mittank" was established, quickly amassing tens of thousands of followers. It became a digital repository for sightings, theories, and grief. But it also became a chaotic noise chamber. Users from around the world began analyzing the compressed, low-resolution JPEG artifacts of the airport security footage. They claimed to see shadows in the reflection of the sliding doors. They adjusted the contrast levels to try and identify the license plates of cars in the distance. This is a phenomenon known as pareidolia, seeing patterns and meaning in random data. The internet wanted to solve the puzzle so badly that it began to invent pieces that did not exist. One specific thread on a German image board spent months tracking the movements of a specific truck driver who was seen in the background of the footage, only to find he had absolutely no connection to the case. This is the double-edged sword of open source intelligence. It provides infinite eyes, but very little filter. However, the digital footprint also kept the case alive. Without the viral nature of the airport video, Lars Mittank might have been filed away as just another tourist lost to the excesses of a party town. The video made him an icon of the unexplained. In 2019, a glimmer of hope emerged from this digital network. A truck driver in Dresden reported picking up a hitchhiker who bore a striking resemblance to an older Lars. The hitchhiker seemed confused, disheveled, and spoke little. The driver, hauntingly, did not realize the potential significance until days later. The Find It, Lars Mittank team, along with private investigators hired by the family, followed this lead aggressively. They generated age-progressed composites. They scoured the truck stops of eastern Germany. But like the man in the video, the hitchhiker had vanished into the ether. We must also address the fake doctor theory that gained traction on Reddit. Some users pointed out that the medical center at the airport was undergoing construction and questioned the legitimacy of the physician on duty. While compelling fiction, this was debunked. The doctor was a licensed practitioner. The construction was routine. Sometimes, a coincidence is just a coincidence, no matter how sinister it feels. So why does this remain unsolved? It is a combination of jurisdiction, geography, and silence. Jurisdictionally, the cooperation between German and Bulgarian authorities was fraught with bureaucratic friction. By the time the German investigators were fully engaged, the trail in Varna was cold. The golden window, the first 48 hours, was spent waiting for a man to return to his hotel who never would. Geographically, the sunflower fields are a vast, organic ocean. If Lars suffered a cardiac event due to the mixture of drugs and adrenaline, and he fell deep within those fields, nature would reclaim the evidence rapidly. Scavengers, decomposition, and the harvesting machinery itself could easily destroy the remains of a single human being. But the most disturbing reason it remains unsolved is the silence of the witnesses. If there were guys following him, they have never spoken. If he hired protection, those individuals have never come forward. If the construction workers saw which way Lars ran after clearing the fence, that statement has been lost to time. We are left with a collection of data points that refuse to form a line. A rupture in the ear, a prescription for 500 milligrams of cefprozil, a text message about 4 men, a sprint toward a fence, and then nothing. In the digital strata, Lars exists as a loop. He is always running. He is always scared. He is always looking over his shoulder. The investigation has not failed for a lack of trying. It has failed because the subject removed himself from the grid so completely that he seemed to exit reality itself. We have the video. We have the medical records. We have the theories. But in the world of digital archaeology, we must admit when the data is corrupted. We can reconstruct the file, but we cannot retrieve the user. As we look at the timeline, one final chilling possibility remains. It is the theory that Lars Mittank did not die in that field. It is the theory that the fugue state, the amnesia, was permanent. That somewhere, perhaps in a homeless shelter in Eastern Europe, or working a farm in the rural Balkans, there is a man with a scar on his ear who does not know his own name. He does not know that thousands of strangers on the internet are analyzing the way he runs. But until physical evidence is found, the investigation remains in a state of quantum superposition. Lars is both dead and alive. He is a victim of crime and a victim of his own mind. The file remains open. The pixelated figure keeps running. End of Part 3. Part 4, the aftermath. The digital age has created a new category of ghost story. In the past, folklore was born from hushed conversations around hearths, or the exaggerated recounting of local tragedies in village taverns. Today, folklore is born in the server farms and data centers that house the collective memory of the internet. The disappearance of Lars Mittank is no longer just a missing persons case filed with the German Federal Criminal Police Office and the Bulgarian authorities. It has transmuted into something else entirely. It has become a modern myth, encoded in low-resolution video files and disseminated across millions of screens. When we analyze the legacy of July 8th, 2014, we must first look at the artifact that defines it: the airport security footage. 28 seconds of video. That is the sum total of the visual evidence of Lars Mittank's final moments in the known world. In the years following his vanishing, this footage has been viewed tens of millions of times. It appears in compilations of unsolved mysteries. It is dissected frame by frame on forums, and it is shared on social media platforms that did not even exist when Lars was still alive. There is a profound dissonance in how this footage is consumed. To the casual viewer, it is a moment of high strangeness, a chilling clip of a man running from invisible demons. To the internet sleuths, it is a puzzle box that surely possesses a solution if one just looks close enough at the pixels. But to Sandra Mittank, Lars's mother, and his friends, it is a looping record of a trauma that never ends. It is a memorial that refuses to stay still. The aftermath of the disappearance was characterized by a frantic, disjointed search that spanned continents. The initial investigation by Bulgarian police was criticized for its lethargy. Valuable time was lost in the first 48 hours, the golden window for locating a missing person. By the time the German authorities became fully involved, the trail had not just gone cold, it had been obliterated by the elements. Sniffer dogs were deployed, tracking Lars's scent to the edge of the highway. But there the olfactory trail vanished, severed as cleanly as a cut wire. This led to the pervasive theory that he had hitched a ride, perhaps unknowingly entering a vehicle that would take him further away from safety, or perhaps into the hands of human traffickers. In the years that followed, the search for Lars morphed into a global phenomenon of pattern recognition and false hope. The internet, in its infinite reach, began to see Lars everywhere. Reports flooded in. He was seen wandering the streets of Porto Velho in Brazil. He was spotted in a homeless encampment in Dusseldorf. He was working on a fishing boat in Brandenburg. One specific instance highlights the cruelty of this digital dragnet. A photograph surfaced of a homeless man in Poland who bore a striking, haunting resemblance to Lars. The facial structure was similar, the brow heavy, the eyes carrying a 1,000-yard stare. For a brief window of time, hope surged. The Find Lars Mittank campaign mobilized. But upon closer inspection, and through police verification, the man was identified as a local individual with no connection to the German tourist. The resemblance was merely a coincidence of biology, a cruel trick of light and shadow. Each false sighting rips open the wound, forcing the family grieve the loss all over again. We are left, then, to sift through the unanswered questions. They are numerous and they are stubborn. The most glaring question remains the identity of the source of fear. Who or what was Lars running from? If we accept the theory of a drug-induced psychosis, the enemy was internal, a phantom construct of a mind under siege. Yet the specificity of his actions suggests a tangible threat. He did not run aimlessly. He ran with purpose. He navigated the airport geography to find the quickest exit. He scaled a fence that was designed to keep people out, not in. Then there is the matter of the phone call, the whispers about 4 men, the claim that they would not let him drive or leave. Were these men real? Was the altercation at the Golden Sands resort simply a bar fight? Or was it the catalyst for a more sinister chain of events? Some theories suggest that the men involved in the fight were connected to organized crime, and that Lars, in his paranoia, or perhaps in reality, believed they had followed him to the airport. But Varna Airport is a secure facility. It is a panopticon of surveillance. If he were being stalked by 4 men, the cameras would have seen them. The cameras saw only Lars. We must also scrutinize the medical aspect. Cefuroxime 500, the antibiotic prescribed for his ruptured eardrum. It is a standard medication, dispensed millions of times a year. Severe psychiatric side effects are statistically negligible, occurring in fewer than 1 in 10,000 cases. However, when combined with alcohol, stress, a potential concussion from the fight, and the terrifying isolation of being alone in a foreign country, the chemical cocktail in his bloodstream could have produced a perfect storm of neurochemical failure. But this is speculation. Without a toxicology report, which requires a body, we are left guessing at the chemistry of his demise. Let us turn our gaze to the site itself. Varna Airport today operates with the same rhythmic, mechanical indifference as it did in 2014. Travelers arrive, dragging wheeled suitcases. They check their phones. They drink overpriced coffee. They complain about delays. The terminal has been renovated, surfaces polished, signs updated. The specific doctor's office where Lars fled has likely been repainted, the furniture rearranged. The air conditioning still hums with that specific recycled breath of international transit zones. But just beyond the tarmac, the geography remains unchanged. The fence is still there, a wire mesh barrier separating the sterile world of aviation from the chaotic growth of nature. Beyond it lies the field. In the summer, it is a sea of sunflowers, their heads bowed heavy with seeds, turning slowly to follow the sun. In the winter, it is a desolate expanse of gray stalks and frozen earth. This field is a liminal space. In the context of this mystery, It is not just a piece of agriculture, it is a void. It is the boundary where the signal stopped. We often think of the world as fully mapped, fully known. We carry devices in our pockets that talk to satellites in orbit, pinpointing our location to within a few meters. We live under the constant gaze of the lens. And yet, a man can run into a field of flowers and simply cease to exist. The legacy of the Lars Mittank case is not found in the police files, which are now gathering dust in a basement in Wiesbaden or Varna. It is found in the corruption of our sense of safety. It challenges the assumption that if we are in trouble, we can just go to the authorities. Lars went to the authorities. He walked into the airport medical center, a place of sanctuary and science, and it was there that his reality fractured. The media coverage has shifted from active reporting to archival curiosity. The Facebook groups dedicated to finding him have become digital graveyards, populated by spam bots, well-meaning but deluded amateur detectives, and the occasional heart-wrenching birthday wish from a family member who refuses to speak of him in the past tense. The original footage, once sharp, degrades slightly with every re-upload, the compression artifacts eating away at his face until he becomes less of a man and more of a symbol. He has become an archetype of the vanishing traveler. He joins the ranks of those swallowed by the earth, like the crew of the Mary Celeste or the hikers of Dyatlov Pass. But unlike those historical mysteries, we watched Lars leave. We have the tape. We are witnesses who arrived 28 seconds too late. There is a philosophical horror at the core of this event. It touches on the fragility of the self. We construct our identities through our connections, our passport, our luggage, our phone, our clothes. In his flight, Lars shed these layers one by one. He left his luggage. He left his phone. He eventually, presumably, lost his clothes to the elements. He stripped himself down to the bare biological essential. A frightened animal running for cover. When we look at the freeze frame of him sprinting, we are not just looking at a missing person. We are looking at the moment the civilized world failed to hold onto one of its own. We are looking at a man running toward a horizon that the rest of us cannot see. Perhaps the most unsettling realization is that there is no ending to this script. In fiction, the detective finds the clue, the body is recovered, the family finds closure. In digital archaeology, we often find only silence. The data stream cuts off. The screen goes black. Lars Mittank ran into the forest on a warm morning in July. The sunflowers were in bloom. The highway was busy. The airport was full of witnesses. And in the decades since, the world has turned over 1,000 times. Governments have changed. Technology has evolved. And the internet has grown exponentially larger. But in the quiet corners of the web, And in the sorrowful silence of a home in Germany, the moment is frozen. He is still running. The fence rattles as he vaults it. The dust kicks up around his shoes. The sun beats down on his yellow shirt. He enters the tree line. And then nothing. This is the nature of the unknown. It does not bargain. It does not explain. It simply takes. And we are left here on the other side of the fence, staring into the static, waiting for a signal that will never come.